You know that feeling? Filling out form after form just to open a simple bank account? We've all been there. But what if I told you that whole process isn't just annoying red tape? It's actually the final chapter in a wild, century-long story packed with gangsters, global criminals, and a crazy high-stakes tech arms race. Right? It really does feel like that. You're just trying to open a checking account, and suddenly you're being asked for a utility bill, your passport, your life story. Why do they need to know all of this? Well, the answer is way more dramatic than you'd think. That's right. The story of Know Your Customer, or KYC, isn't about paperwork at all. It's about this constant battle. On one side, you've got regulators trying to make the financial system transparent, and on the other, you have criminals constantly inventing new ways to hide in the shadows. And this game has been going on for a long, long time. So to really get what's happening now, we need to rewind. We're going back to a time when bank secrecy wasn't some kind of loophole. It was the entire point of banking. Okay, so this whole thing really kicks off in the 1930s. The feds couldn't nail Al Capone for all his violent crimes, but you know what they could get him for? Tax evasion. How? By following the money. And that set a huge precedent. But fast forward a few decades, and organized crime had gotten so big, they were laundering billions of dollars. It made Capone's operation look like child's play. By 1970, the government realized the old rules just weren't working, and it was time to change the game completely. And this was a huge shift in thinking. The government basically turned to every bank in the country and said, guess what? You're not just watching from the sidelines anymore. You are now the front line in the war against financial crime. And that, right there, changed everything. This whole new philosophy got written into law with the Bank Secrecy Act of 1970. The entire goal was to create a mandatory paper trail for investigators. It was built on three main ideas. First, force banks to keep detailed records. Second, make them report any big cash transaction over $10,000. And third, make people report any bank accounts they had overseas. This was basically the birth of modern financial surveillance. But you know how it goes. As soon as you build a new wall, criminals immediately start looking for ways to get around it. And they didn't just hop across state lines. They went global. And this brings us to the next big villain in our story, a bank called the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, or BCCI. Now that was its official name, but its real business earned it a much, much more accurate nickname. See, BCII was an absolute masterclass in dodging the rules. Its structure was this tangled web spread across dozens of countries, and it was designed on purpose so that no single government could ever see the full picture. It was literally built to be a black box for dirty money. So when BCCI finally came crashing down in 1991, it sent shockwaves through the entire global financial system. The scandal was so huge it forced the Bank of England to issue the first real, formal KYC guidelines. You can see the pattern, right? A huge crisis happens and new regulations follow. Then, a decade later, the 9/11 attacks happened. And overnight, the focus of all this scrutiny shifted from financial crime to national security, which led to the single most important piece of KYC law ever written. Here's what made the USA PATRIOT Act so powerful. It didn't just set rules for American banks. Because the US dollar is at the center of global finance, it effectively gave the US the power to say to every bank in the world, if you want to touch US dollars, you have to play by our KYC rules. It basically globalized American financial regulations overnight. And what were those rules? Well, the Patriot Act laid out this blueprint for what's called an anti-money laundering program. It's based on these 5 pillars. Every bank has to have them: internal policies, a compliance officer in charge, employee training, independent audits, and, the big one, number 5, customer due diligence. This is the framework that basically every bank in the world still uses today. Okay, so that's the history lesson, but what does all of this actually look like in practice? What are the actual tools that banks are using on you and me every single day? Well, it all starts with this thing called Customer Due Diligence, or CDD. This is the baseline, the foundation. It's the process of not just checking your ID, but also figuring out who really owns and controls a company, understanding why you want the account in the first place, and then keeping an eye on your transactions over time. But here's the thing. Not everyone gets treated the same. That standard CDD, that's for everybody. But for a small group of high-risk customers, they get what's called enhanced due diligence. Think about senior politicians, their families, people in industries known for corruption. For them, the bank's investigation goes way, way deeper. And a huge part of that deeper dive comes down to understanding this really crucial difference. Source of funds is pretty simple. It's just asking, where'd the money for this one deposit come from? You know, like your paycheck.
But source of wealth, that's a much bigger question. That's the bank asking, how did you build your entire fortune? It's the difference between a quick check and a full-blown financial biography.
So that pretty much brings us to today. And that cat and mouse game we've been talking about? Oh, it has not ended. It's just moved from stuffy boardrooms and paper files onto a brand new digital battlefield. And looking ahead, we're really seeing two competing visions for the future of identity. On one hand, you have artificial intelligence, which promises to make the system we already have just faster, smarter, and better at predicting risk. But on the other hand, you have technologies like blockchain and self-sovereign identity that basically want to scrap the old system and build a new one where you, the user, are in control of your own identity. But for right now, the thing that's really driving change is e-KYC, or electronic KYC. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just taking that old, slow, paper-based process and making it digital. So no more walking into a branch with a stack of documents. You just do it all in an app on your phone. And the benefits are pretty obvious, right? Signing up for an account now, it takes minutes instead of days. It's cheaper for the banks because it's all automated, it's way more convenient for us as customers, and it's actually more accurate because it cuts down on human error. This is exactly why the whole industry is jumping on this so fast.
But remember that cat and mouse game? Well, it's back. Because moving everything online just creates a whole new set of problems. Criminals aren't trying to use fake paper IDs anymore. Now they're using AI-generated deepfakes and launching crazy, sophisticated cyber attacks to try and fool the new digital systems. The arms race just continues on a new front.
And that's really what this whole story, from Al Capone's tax returns all the way to AI-powered surveillance, boils down to. It's this one fundamental question. How do we build a financial system that's secure enough to stop criminals and terrorists without totally giving up our own personal privacy? And as the technology on both sides gets more and more powerful, finding that right balance, that's the biggest challenge of all.